Detroit, we need to talk. Because for the last few seasons, this defense has been carrying around the same nagging headache, the same itch nobody could quite scratch. Every single year under Dan Campbell, it's been the same story. Aidan Hutchinson terrorizes one side of the offensive line, and the other side just breathes easy. And it's not like the front office hasn't tried. They brought in bodies. They rotated pieces. They hoped. But hope is not a pass rush plan, and Lions fans know that better than anyone. Well, buckle up, because there might finally be an answer to that riddle, and it's wearing number 9. Before we get into it, and this is going to be a good one, we've got to say something from the bottom of our hearts. This channel, Detroit Scope, just crossed 350 subscribers, and honestly, we are blown away. Every single one of you who hit that button, who left a comment, who shared one of these videos with your buddy at work, you built this. We are inching closer to 1,000, and we need your help to get there. If you haven't subscribed yet, please, in the nicest way possible, we're asking you to join the family. It costs nothing, it takes 2 seconds, and it means everything to a small channel like ours. Okay, now let's get into the news. For years, the formula for a good Dan Campbell defense has been deceptively simple on paper. You don't need 2 superstar edge rushers. Nobody has that. You don't see teams running around with 2 Micah Parsons, 2 Myles Garretts. That just doesn't exist in this league. What you need is one legitimate difference maker, and then one guy on the other side who is simply solid. Not flashy. Not a household name. Just dependable. Someone who can hold the point of attack, occasionally get home to the quarterback, and force opposing offensive coordinators to actually respect both sides of the football. Detroit has had Hutchinson checked off that first box for years now. But that second box? That's been a graveyard of near misses. Al-Quadin Muhammad gave them a stretch of solid football, but he couldn't consistently stop the run. Marcus Davenport was hurt more than he was healthy. Every year it's felt like a new name, a new hope, and then a new disappointment. So when the Lions used a second-round pick this spring to trade up and grab Derrick Moore out of Michigan, sending picks 50 and 128 to the Jets to make it happen, the front office made it very clear how much they believed in this kid. General Manager Brad Holmes reportedly had Moore as the team's number 1 option on the board heading into that second round. That's not a throwaway pick. That's a statement. But here's the twist in the story. And if you've been following this channel, you know Detroit's 2026 training camp has been an absolute injury minefield. Moore barely got a chance to show anybody anything before his groin decided to have other plans. He went down in early August, missed a huge chunk of camp, and for weeks, the conversation around Detroit's defensive end room just quietly moved on without him. Nobody was talking about Derrick Moore in OTAs. Nobody was talking about him deep into camp. He became an afterthought, another name on the injury report in a summer absolutely littered with them. And then he came back. And folks, he did not come back quiet. Just days after returning to the field, Moore turned in a performance that had reporters buzzing. He was worked in situationally with the first-team defense, mostly in third-down packages, and the coaching staff has been moving him all over the defensive line to find the best matchups. In one particular rep, he used pure burst to squeeze between 2 offensive linemen like they weren't even there. In a situational drill, he beat rookie tackle Blake Miller clean. And it didn't stop there. In an even more recent practice, Moore turned in a 2-sack day, outworking blockers during a critical end-of-half situational period and then beating Blake Miller again on a 3rd-and-long rep for his 2nd sack. Afterward, Moore was asked point-blank if this was a preview of what he and Hutchinson could deliver together on Sundays this fall. His answer? He wasn't giving too much away, but he made it clear that whoever's out there is going to make the defense look the same, no drop-off. Now, let's pump the brakes just a little, because that's the responsible thing to do here. Nobody is anointing Derrick Moore as the next great Lions pass rusher off 2 hot practices in a row. But here's why this actually matters, and it's bigger than just one player having a good week. Remember, Detroit's defensive issues last season went beyond just the edge. Alim McNeill wasn't fully himself coming off injury, which meant there was no consistent interior pressure either. So Hutchinson was essentially playing 1-on-3 most Sundays, getting chipped, doubled, and had tight ends sliding over to help just to slow him down. If the interior can get home even occasionally this year, and now there's a real threat opposite Hutch too, even a situational one, that changes the entire math for opposing offensive coordinators. You can't scheme around one guy anymore. And when it's 3rd and 9 in December, in a playoff game, and Detroit just needs to get one hand on the quarterback, that's exactly the kind of depth piece that turns a good defense into a scary one. Now let's shift over to the offense for a second, because there's a fascinating subplot developing with the receiver room, and it involves two names Lions fans have been buzzing about for weeks: Isaac TeSlaa and cornerback Ennis Rakestraw. TeSlaa has quietly turned into one of the more scrutinized names in Detroit's camp, and honestly, it's a little unfair how high the bar has been set for him. He flashed enough as a rookie to get everyone dreaming about a monster sophomore leap, and once that narrative takes hold, every single practice gets put under a microscope. Well, in one of the more recent team periods, TeSlaa delivered his best single practice of the summer. He hauled in a 21-yard gain during 7-on-7 work, converted a check down for 5 yards, and beat veteran cornerback Roquan Asin clean on a whip route. It was the kind of day that reminds you why Detroit's coaching staff has been patient with his development. And look, that patience makes sense historically. Wide receiver development in this league is almost never a straight line. Look at Jameson Williams. Every single year, he's gotten incrementally better, and now he's blossoming into one of the most dangerous deep threats in football. Or look at the gold standard himself, Amon-Ra St. Brown, who is quickly turning into a legitimately generational route runner. Amon-Ra barely did anything in the first half of his rookie season. He was out there, he was getting representatives, but the production just wasn't matching the hype yet. Then that switch flipped in the second half of that rookie year, and the rest is history. TeSlaa's development is following a similar shape, and this camp performance is a real signal that the leap everyone's been waiting for might actually be coming. Then there's Ennis Rakestraw, who has quietly been putting together one of the more encouraging camp stretches of any Lions defender. In one particularly electric team period, Rakestraw was seemingly everywhere. He blanketed Jameson Williams in one-on-one coverage, made an immediate tackle after breaking on a flat route, and physically drove Amon-Ra St. Brown to the ground on a contested rep. For a Lions secondary that has dealt with more than its share of shakeups this offseason, seeing a young corner step up and compete like that against the team's top 2 receivers is exactly the kind of development the coaching staff needs heading into the fall. It's also a relief given Rakestraw went down with a scary-looking injury earlier in the preseason. He's fully back now, and is playing like a man with something to prove. Speaking of injuries, let's be honest, this has been a brutal camp for the Lions when it comes to the medical tent. But there is a silver lining if you zoom out. Outside of center Cade May's more significant injury, most of what Detroit has dealt with has been the manageable kind. The 2-day tweaks, the week-off precautions, the stuff that stings in the moment but doesn't derail a season. That's genuinely fine. That's part of the grind of an NFL training camp. The real fear is always the season enders, the 6 to 10 week disasters, and so far, outside of Mays, Detroit has largely dodged that bullet. It's still early enough in the process that there's real reason for optimism here. Now, here's something worth watching closely as the preseason continues. Jared Goff is expected to see the field for Detroit's second preseason game, and let's just say the fanbase has some understandable jitters about that. Nobody wants to see their franchise quarterback take unnecessary hits in a game that ultimately doesn't count. But there's a practical case to be made here too. Every other position on this roster, Detroit can work around an injury. They cannot work around losing Goff. That's roughly a dozen to 15 snaps total, and a huge chunk of those are going to be simple handoffs or quick, low-risk throws out of his hand. It's a calculated risk, but a fairly conservative one. And finally, let's talk about something that doesn't always get the credit it deserves. Goff has become almost obsessive about situational football, drilling scenarios down to the exact number of timeouts an opponent has left and exactly how many yards they'd need for a cheap field goal. And in today's NFL, that matters more than ever, because kickers are simply better than they've ever been. A 45-yard field goal is basically automatic across the league now, and even Detroit, a team that considers itself lucky to roster a legitimate 50-plus yard weapon in Jake Bates, knows opposing kickers can hit from that range too. So the modern math has changed. It's not about protecting a 2-minute cushion anymore. Even leaving an opponent 30 seconds and 2 timeouts can be enough for a game-changing kick. Dan Campbell knows this cold, and it shows in how his staff manages the clock, milking every last second late in games rather than handing possessions back early. It's a small thing that doesn't always make the highlight reel, but it's the kind of detail that wins close December football games. So where does that leave us heading into the heart of the preseason? A defensive end who looked like a forgotten man is suddenly forcing his way back into the conversation. A sophomore receiver is starting to look like the version everyone hoped for. A young cornerback is proving he belongs. and the head coach keeps quietly building one of the sharpest situational units in the league. Piece by piece, this is a team that looks like it's putting itself back together the right way. Alright, Lions fans, that's what we've got for you today. If this breakdown got you fired up for the season, do us a massive favor and smash that like button. It genuinely helps this channel grow. Drop a comment down below and let us know what you think Detroit's defensive end room looks like on opening day. And please, if you haven't already, hit subscribe. We are so close to 1,000 subscribers, and every single one of you who joins gets us closer to that goal. Thank you to the 350 of you who already believe in what we're building here at Detroit Scope. We'll see you in the next one.